Good evening and welcome to Loren Live. Cry havoc and let slip the dogs of war. War drums on the horizon. That is the subject of tonight's show. My name is Christopher Gergen. Thank you for joining us, and joining all of us this evening from his home in Moses Lake, Washington, is the insubordinate one himself, Mr. Loren Culp. Let me get Loren on here. There he is.
How you doing, Chris? Good to see you.
Good. I'm pressing wrong buttons. I hope I didn't blow anything up.
Thank you guys for joining us. Deanna, Donna, Dean, Dave, Joel, Reader, Shelly, Sean, Randy, Susan, Jay. Appreciate you guys. I can't say everybody. People are piling on here by the hundreds. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks for being with us tonight.
So we have a bunch of nonsense going on internationally because of this Biden administration's weakness on the international stage. And one of the criticisms about Trump would be that, he's going to destroy the planet and everybody's going to die and it's going to be terrible. But at the end of the day, he got, North Korea to settle down. He got the Russians to settle down. He got things in the Middle East under control. He handled things perfectly. And then just a month after he gets out of office, all of a sudden everything begins to fall apart. We botched the withdrawal in Afghanistan. And so here we go, Loren. For the first time in 20 years, we've been without a war for, I guess, about 5 months now, 6 months now.
Yeah.
And here we are with the Russians wanting to make a move into Ukraine. So tonight I wanted to, as a congressional candidate, this is going to be something that you're going to, or as a congressman, rather, you're going to have to deal with in Congress.
Yeah. And you think back, to those of us that were alive during that time, we had about 8 years of pretty good peace during President Reagan's term. We had a strong commander-in-chief. I served in the military under President Reagan, and nobody messed with us. They messed a lot with the peanut farmer, before Reagan came in, Jimmy Carter. I didn't think that there could be a worse president than him, but we're definitely seeing it now. President Trump had things under control, the border, international affairs, and if Biden would have just come into office and slept most of the time and didn't do anything, everything would still be fine, right? It only took him a year to screw everything up. But getting back to this war, this talk of war or going to war against Russia, there is nothing in the Constitution that gives the president alone the power to take us to war. That is something constitutionally that is given to the House of Representatives, the Congress. And that's the only government body that can take our nation to war, the people's representatives. And our founders did that for a reason. They didn't want a king. They didn't want a ruler. And that's what you get when you have someone who has the power to take an entire nation from a peacetime to a wartime just by saying, here we go. Right. And what they're doing right now is pushing us towards that.
So back in 2000, 2001, 2002 timeframe, 9/11 happens. I'm sure, everyone that is, older than about 27, 28 years old, at least has some faint memory of 9/11. I know I was at the recruiter's office the next day and joined the United States Navy. A lot of people felt that way. And then here we go, we're off to war. So how exactly did we end up authorizing that action and the continued action that we've spent 20 years? Like how has that worked in the past, and how should it work according to the Constitution?
Well, our nation was attacked by a bunch of terrorists that were based in Afghanistan. And what should have happened, before I get to your question, what should have happened is, we had the intel where they were at, where their bases were at. We should have gone in there and blew the crap out of them, and took down their leaders and everything, and been home within 2 weeks. But it turned into a 20-year war, where we spent time fighting in Africa, all over the Middle East, Iraq and Afghanistan. And it basically, it comes from Congress giving away their authority to one person in the White House. And like I said a few minutes ago, that is not authorized by the Constitution. So I think between like 2001, 2002, Congress signed authorization to use military force. Well, that's not constitutional. It doesn't say in the Constitution that Congress has the authority, the only authority, to take our nation to war. But, if you want to just let the president act like a king or a dictator, you can give him that authorization to take us to war anytime they want. It's just Congress not having a backbone, not having a spine. They're just giving that power that they have only away so that they can, that they're not culpable. They're not the ones who sent our nation to war. They'll put the blame on the president if things go wrong. And that power needs to be taken back so that we don't end up in 20-year wars. Given authorization a couple times in 2001, 2002, and then we end up in a 20-year war. That can't happen anymore. And it's always, it's not the necessarily the senators and congressmen's sons, the president's sons, that are going over there and shedding their blood, or daughters shedding their blood for our nation. It's middle class and the poor that are usually the mass majority of the ones that are going over there and fighting. And we need to take that power back from the White House and put it back into Congress where it belongs. Because our founders understood that it's harder to get a larger group of people to decide to go to war, right? They wanted it hard for us to go to war. They didn't want it easy, and they didn't want it under the control of one person, which makes it easy. So
now
we need to put that power back into Congress. We need to take that power back.
So over the course of 20 years, how often did Congress have to reauthorize this war?
I only think that they authorized it twice.
In 2001, 2002, they only authorized it twice, and then we ended up in a 20-year war.
Yeah, that can't happen. And look at the way that Biden withdrew our forces out of Afghanistan. We got nothing to show for it. We were over there building schools and roads and utilities, spending billions of dollars, and then we back out of there in the middle of the night and leave billions of dollars worth of weaponry. Helicopters, trucks, firearms, ammunition, bombs. And it's ridiculous. We did all that for what? And I would like to recommend that everybody listening look up a book. And it's written by a 4-star Marine Corps general. His name's General Smedley Butler. And the name of the book is War is a Racket. And he served, he's not alive anymore, but he served in many wars that the United States fought. I think even before World War I, but he served in several wars and conflicts that the United States was in. And the title of the book, War is a Racket, it'll give you a good insight from a military commander's point of view on the military-industrial complex and why we go to war and why we spend so much time at war. And it's not necessary for the good of our country.
War is a big business. I mean, bombs and bandages are a big business, and especially when the players are selling bombs and bandages to all sides in the conflict, then that's pretty good for their share prices and pretty good for their bottom line.
And they turn right around and they make large donations to the politicians who keep us at war and who want us at war. The war hawks. So
So
it's big money. It's very big money.
So now we have a bunch of those war hawks on both sides of the fence, Mr. Colt, both on the Republican side, the Democrat side. We've got State Department officials. We've got, the alphabet agencies out there with their CIA analysts and different folks, DIA analysts, DHS folks out there, and they're all beating the drums of war. And it's really interesting how there's so much division in our country, and yet when it comes to going to war over the Ukraine, which poses no strategic advantage to us. I mean, Ukraine, it's not even a member of NATO. NATO doesn't even want Ukraine as a member. The government is thoroughly corrupt and has had issues.
Mm-hmm.
There's no strategic purpose. But what do you make of so this is a two-part question. What do you make of all of a sudden all of this this collegial across the aisle chorus chanting for war? And number two, what if you were in Congress right now and you were being interviewed on this, what would your stance on this war be?
Well, my stance on this war would be that we don't need to go to war against Russia to protect Ukraine. We don't need to protect Ukraine's borders. We have our own borders that we need to worry about. We have our own infrastructure we need to worry about. We don't need to be in a war. I mean, and it would push Russia towards China, right? They would most likely team up. And as far as Ukraine being part of NATO, there's politicians that are talking about that they want, if they make Ukraine part of NATO, then all of the nations that are in NATO would help to defend. But you kind of think about that. How would we feel if, Canada or Mexico became very friendly with Russia, and then they formed a pact, and Russia started moving military equipment in right on our northern border or our southern border, putting missiles and defenses and Air Force bases. How would we feel about that? And I'm sure, I'm no defender of Russia, but I'm sure that they feel the same way. And so,
well, that did happen. That did happen, Loren, in the 1960s with the Bay of Pigs.
Yeah, in Cuba,
they were going to put the Russians were going to put nuclear missiles in Fidel Castro's Cuba, 90 miles off of the Florida coast, and literally we were seconds away from World War III over.
Yeah, and I believe it or not, I remember that. I may have been less than a year old, but no, I don't remember that.
Yeah.
But yeah, from history, obviously. But yeah, and we can't blame Russia for feeling the same way. We talk about going over there, right on their border. Why we're protecting another country's border and not our own is kind of suspect, right? I mean, we've got fentanyl and heroin flooding across, human smuggling, people from all nations, a lot of them terrorist nations coming across our southern border. We're not even protecting our border. Why are we going to send troops and equipment over to Ukraine? It makes absolutely no sense if you think, like a constitutional conservative. But Biden needs a war. He's doing such a crappy job. He's got to do something to distract everybody, right? And, it does get the economy going a little bit because there's more people hired in the military industrial complex, to build the planes, build the bombs, build all the supplies, and transport all that stuff. It's billions of dollars that gets dumped into those companies. So he needs that because our economy is crap and everybody's paying attention to the stupid things that he's doing. So if he becomes a wartime president, then that'll be a distraction. And I'm sure that he wants that as well as the people that support the military industrial complex and benefit from it.
Ladies and gentlemen, here is a fun fact that you may or may not know. President H.W. Bush was the only president to win a war and lose the subsequent election. So war is a big boost because Americans love a winner, right? And so military action is oftentimes used to boost sagging poll numbers. I really believe, Loren, and you may disagree, and I'm not speaking for you on this. You may disagree with me on this, but I really believe that this has more to do with distraction from the pandemic or COVID. Now that England has basically repealed all of their stuff, they basically said COVID is the flu, and we're going to manage it like the flu. And there are other countries that are following suit. You've had our own in the United States, Florida. Children have been in school, unmasked, ready to roll, rock and roll since August of 2020. You've got basically the whole COVID policies are just untenable now. And they need a distraction. They haven't been able to get the medicine out there. I think this is a big distraction. I think it's a big distraction from the economy to inflation to COVID to these different things. What do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. He needs a distraction. The economy is in the toilet. Inflation is all-time highs. We've got officers being assassinated in their patrol cars, all-time records, murders, all-time records. It's total failed policies all across the board. And let's not forget, too, the Patriot Act was enacted, about that time as well. Early on in the war on terror, right? Which, how do you have a war on an action?
Right.
So the Patriot Act, gave our intelligence communities a lot more authorization to spy, supposedly, and take action, supposedly on foreign people. But, the Patriot Act now, where's it being used? It's being used against parents who speak up at school board meetings, for crying out loud.
Absolutely.
The Department of Justice is going after parents because of school board meetings. And so, the government never gives back power. Once given, they're going to hold on to it. They're not giving it back. And so we get into another war, there's going to be all kinds of other things that they're going to want to do, powers that they're going to want to take. And those are freedoms we don't get back.
It's interesting how the Democrats always frame, and just the political class as well, because the Republicans do it too, but the political class, they always frame things and name them the opposite of what they are. So the Patriot Act is about the most unpatriotic thing you could ever even conceive in your mind.
And the Voting Rights Act that they're just working on right now, it is not anything to do with making sure that everyone can vote freely and fairly and one person votes. Absolutely the opposite. And they always point the finger at the other side when they're doing exactly what they're pointing the finger about. So it's becoming, I guess if you want to look at the good things, the good side of what's going on, it's waking a lot of people up, a lot of people. People aren't believing what they're being told on CNN anymore. CNN ratings are in the toilet because they just lie. And, pretty quick people catch on.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the good thing about it, and we saw that in the 2020 race for governor, more votes than any Republican candidate in the history of Washington State. And a lot of those people were former Democrats. So it's opening people's eyes. Right. That's really good.
It really is. So if, according to the Constitution, I'm assuming going to war is constitutional. And I'm assuming the Constitution tells, because you always say, you famously say that the Constitution is the employee handbook for Congress and the Senate and the government in general.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that there is a section in the employee handbook that specifically deals with war. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution, and I do look at that, the Constitution as an employee handbook. If you run a business or you get hired by somebody, you generally have an employee handbook that explains your job to you, and that's what the Constitution is when you think about it. That's the employee handbook that our representatives, our public servants, from the president on down, that's their employee handbook. And when you get a job, you look through your employee handbook. But when you get a job as the people's representative in an elected capacity, you raise your right hand and you swear an oath that I will uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States. That employee handbook. You swear an oath to do that. And it's very telling, when people talk about things that aren't authorized, in the Constitution. And I think that we need to have people start pointing out to politicians the 10th Amendment. I've talked about this before on the show. It's very, very important. The 10th Amendment is the answer if we can get people in office that will abide by it and enforce it. And the 10th Amendment says that anything, basically that anything not written in the Constitution for the federal government to do, it's left up to the states and the people. And think about the size of government we would have right now, the federal government, if it abided by the 10th Amendment. And the 10th Amendment is just as much enforceable as the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, and all the amendments. It has to be followed. We would have such a small federal government, the way that our founders intended, if we abided by the 10th Amendment and had the federal government only doing what is in there. And if there's something that, the people's representatives want the federal government to do, and it's not authorized in the Constitution, it can be amended, and the states can agree to that. But we can't trample on the Constitution. It has to be followed, because it just grows and grows and grows, right? It's kind of like an onion. There's layer upon layer upon layer, and we need to peel back those bitter, hard layers on the outside and get back to that core of what our founders intended.
When you go to Congress, Mr. Culp, I would like to make a personal, respectful request of you that you try to abolish the IRS.
Absolutely, yeah. Our government was set up,
and the Department of Education.
That's the top of the list. Yeah, the Department of Education. Yeah. I want the authority for teaching our children back at the local level in the parents' hands. Not an unelected bureaucrat in the Department of Education at the federal level. That's why we saw all that crap that was being sent out. It wasn't just one or two school districts. It was all across the nation. And that kind of garbage is being forced by an unelected bureaucrat in the Department of Education. But getting back to your IRS request, absolutely. I will push for that as well. Our government was not, first of all, not supposed to be this big, not supposed to be sucking up this much money out of the economy, not to be printing it out of thin air based on nothing, which devalues our buying power and causes inflation. But if we can peel back that onion, right, get back to where we were supposed to be, we wouldn't have all these crazy departments and all of these unelected bureaucrats telling us what to do. We would get back our individual freedom and liberty. The government could live within its means on tariffs, the way that it was originally set up to, not on income tax. I mean, an income tax on your labor is Marxist.
Mm-hmm. And immoral.
Yes. In the Communist Manifesto, Karl Marx wrote that from each according to his ability, to each according to his need. That is communism. And that is what the progressive income tax is. If you work hard, you make more money than your neighbor, you pay more taxes, and they take it and they redistribute it. That is not right. You should be able to keep the fruits of your labor. If you want to work from daylight till dark and have 3 different jobs, run 2 businesses, and your neighbor wants to sit on the couch and eat potato chips and watch Oprah, great. You shouldn't have to be paying their way.
Right.
And it's not charity. That there are people that definitely need help that can be handled at the state and the local level. It's not a federal constitutionally mandated thing, but we get the federal government's hands out of all of these things. All of the money that it sucks up stays at the state and the local level and in our pocket, most importantly. And then charity steps in again like it used to be. Right now they call it, it's charitable to tax people and then distribute it to other people. Well, that's not charity at all. That's basically robbery. I mean, they're taking money from you, depending on how hard you work, depends on how much they're going to take, right? They're taking it from you by force. Just try not to pay your taxes and see what happens.
Yep.
So we need to get rid of all of the garbage that is not constitutionally authorized, get back to the 10th Amendment, make sure that is enforced. And you guys read the 10th Amendment. It's not very long. Know what it says. And when you talk to a candidate or your representative at any level of government, ask them if they know what the 10th Amendment means. Yep. And then if they don't, tell them. And then tell them that you expect them to abide by their oath of office, including the 10th Amendment. A lot of them will probably look at you like a deer in the headlights because they're afraid. They're afraid to do that if they even know what the 10th Amendment says. But we have to have people representing us that have a backbone that will go to Washington, D.C. and abide by the Constitution and start dismantling this humongous apparatus that is called the federal government.
So, Loren, we have some good news regarding the store. You want to share with the people?
Yes. Well, first of all, I always have my cup of Minutemen coffee. Can you see that? 1776% constitutional conservative.
There you go.
1776% constitutional conservative. The store is up. We've got that
again.
Design. It's up, and there's actually products now. We are. I guess we're working on the supply chain. It's all fixed, but that graphic is on cups. It's on shirts, and I believe hats too. But the store is up, and it's at culp4congress.com. So you guys get over there, get some gifts for your friends, get something for yourself, and check it out. Support the campaign.
Fantastic. All right. Any final words for the folks before we go this evening, Loren?
Yeah, you guys, hopefully you caught me on Newsmax this morning. I was on there this morning about 8 o'clock. Didn't have much time to put out the word, but I did throw a post up on Facebook and on Twitter. And by the way, if you're on Twitter, be sure to follow me at Loren Culp. And this is broadcast on YouTube as well, Facebook and YouTube. So you guys share the heck out of this. I need help spreading the word, and we need all the support that you guys can give. It's going to be quite the race. I think there's 6 people in this race right now.
Yep. Absolutely. And if you'd like to contribute, you can go to the website, culp4congress.com, click that donate button, and you can donate there. So, Mr. Culp, thank you very much for joining us with and the folks tonight from your home in Moses Lake. A lot of people don't know that
Absolutely.
You live in Moses Lake, and
yes.
I have for almost a year.
Love it here.
Absolutely. So thank you all very much for joining us this evening, and we will see you guys next week. Have a great night.
God bless you guys. Good night.